All right. Today, welcome back to Strive Talking Points. This is Senator Elizabeth Warren. She's also now announced her 2020 presidential run, and she's doing it in a glorious fashion. Everyone can probably remember the Lock Her Up Trump chant from 2016, referring to Hillary Clinton and the email scandals, all the stuff that kind of embroiled her and her family. And here we go. Warren pushes back on Native American jab, says Trump may not be free person by 2020. Basically, now it's lock him up. And this is meeting with skepticism from the left. No, it's actually not. It's very much the part and parcel for all of this. And what are the Native American jabs against her? Here is one where the Pocahontas as a document. This is actually her registration card stating that she was a American Indian. She has registered as the first Native American ever to teach at Harvard. Native American registration card here. And she's just going for it. She's apologizing for this. There are actually stories that came out with this registration card as a back part of a story, which they are already trying to act like a lot of these mainstream places had written about. However, no, this surface, she has basically no idea what a Native American Indian was. All she knew was that her mother's parents didn't like her father, and her mother and father told her it's because he was a Native American, which he clearly was not. He had no tribal affiliation, nor did his parents. And we're moving forward with this now. She is now entering the race, and I am very concerned because I don't think that she would have any chance on a nationwide election other than, Orange Man bad. This would be her only real staying point. Will she run as the first Native American presidential candidate, or she decided after 32 years, this is not playing so well anymore? See you on the campaign trail, Liz. President Common was seen by many as a reference to the Trail of Tears. It was seen by nobody as that. It was only seen by this person at NBC News who wants you to believe that. People have been calling it the campaign trail for generations in this country, and you're trying to make it worse. Republican brushed aside the tweet saying Warren has made herself a laughingstock. I have concerns about someone like Elizabeth Warren pretending to be a Native American, Cheney said, calling Warren's past assertions a disgrace. If you would claim to be a part of another race, which Native Americans, to my knowledge, see members of the tribe not as a race, but as people who accept tribal law, tribal standards, tribal stories, and tribal authority, much more than they considered a race. And Elizabeth Warren has had none of those, and yet she persists and has persisted for years in this. And you see that shot right there against him for no reason other than they could take a shot. Elizabeth Warren plays out to be the middle-class white lady who has to keep apologizing for all of her Native American claims, for her attitudes. I don't see how she can handle it. Here's Elizabeth Warren's solution for a dangerous nuclear weapons policy. All right, here we go. Where she laid out her gripes with liberal international order and the threats she believed President Donald Trump's strand of nationalism poses to democracy itself. Now, the strand of nationalism that most people are seeing is that the elected officials of a country that represent the people of that country should focus on the people of said country first. The whole America's First initiative is something that I believe in, that you're seeing rising through Europe. Most of Asia doesn't understand this because most Asian governments seek to take care of the people of their nation first and everything else as secondary. You can even see some of that in some of these socialist countries where they basically, the people that want the money get the money in that country, and the people who are the slave race don't. I'm just kidding. Socialist countries rarely ever do anything for the good of the people. It's strictly for the wealthy, the rich, the powerful in those countries. Nationalism that you're seeing pop up, the populist movement, are in backlash to the farthest left, farthest right groups. I mean, that's kind of going on now. On Wednesday, the Massachusetts senator continued building her foreign policy on the platform by introducing I can't say that word, No First Use Act. This bill aims to establish in law the U.S. will not use nuclear weapons first against hostile actors. Basically, we only use nukes once they've been used. That seems fine. By making clear that deterrence is our sole purpose for our arsenal, this would reduce chances of nuclear miscalculation and help us maintain our moral diplomatic leadership around the world. I don't disagree with that. I really don't think we should be nuking countries here and there. It doesn't seem like a great idea that, you disagree with us, we blow you up, which is part and kind of the way the current world works, is everybody's threatening everybody. Elizabeth Warren's proposed tax on enormous fortunes explained. A 2% levy on assets more than $50 million and higher rates on billionaires. 2% levy tax. Let's see. Senator Elizabeth Warren wants to curb spiraling inequality in the U.S. and make rich pay, according to Scoop from the Washington Post. Most Americans currently pay property taxes to the local government as a form of wealth tax. The majority of middle-class assets are property. Rich people, of course, own real estate, but tend to mostly own shares of stock, financial institutions, and largely evade taxation. The French economist Thomas Piketty put wealth taxes back on the intellectual agenda in his book Capital in the 21st Century. The basic plan is to levy a 2% tax on fortunes more than $50 million and a 3% tax on fortunes worth $1 billion, according to the Post. This tax would hit approximately 75,000 families and raise $2.75 trillion over a 10-year period. Now, is this tax every year, or is it just a one-time fee? Most taxing assets, adding Y, cost of wealth. That doesn't make any sense. A 3% tax on that fortune would cost $1.7 billion. All right, CEO Mark Zuckerberg is worth $57 billion. That is purely in stock prices. So if the stock goes up or down, his tax would go up or down with it. And if applied that year, could tax his fortune close to $0 over the course of several decades if the fortune did not accrue investment gains. What? Facebook Mark Zuckerberg is worth $57 billion. A 3% tax on that fortune would cost $1.7 billion the first year, and if applied year after year, could tax his fortune to $0 over the course of several decades. So basically, you pay the tax every year, and the $57 billion is not cash in hand; it's stock owned. So if the stock moves, essentially, the U.S. government is saying they get 2 to 3% of the stock market every year. Warren's proposal is for a progressive wealth tax in which 2% rate does not apply to the first $50 million and 3% only kicks in once you have more than $1 billion. You pay that every year. So if you do happen to earn $1 billion, of course, the taxes you would earn otherwise, which would pay, which I think capital gain is 15%, you would pay another 3%. So you'd pay 18%. And if you made no money, you would still pay the 3%. Interesting. That is wild, because if the stock market moved, would they then be able to say that I lost $500 million this year or $1 billion this year because the little stock needle moved? And would the U.S. just as a country absorb all the stocks? I find that very strange. An apology from the heart. Senator Elizabeth Warren, sorry for identifying as a Native American. I have seen these. I'm not a tribal citizen. My apology is an apology for not having been more sensitive about tribal citizenship and tribal sovereignty. And I want to underline the point: tribes and only the tribes determine tribal citizenship. She has been doing this part her entire life, and now that she went through, and oh my God, she is a U.S. Senator, and she had to go all the way up to taking a DNA test, having it show that she was not a citizen of genetically a Native American, and then not only that, the tribe had to come out and stop her and tell her that she's not a member of the tribe, and she still wants you to know that she's not a member of the tribe. This is just a terrible gaffe, not very interesting, but it's going to keep going on. Again, this is the lock him up versus lock her up. Of course, Trump did not put his political opponents in jail. Robert Mueller's ongoing investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 election, which has already added a few people. However, it hasn't really gone all that well into Trump's life. Most of the stuff has been kind of thrown out or just moved along. Donald Trump is not the only problem we got. Donald Trump is a symptom of a badly broken system. So our job as we start rolling into the next election is not try to respond on a daily basis. It's to talk about what we understand is broken in this country and talk about what needs to be done to change it. Radical identity politics, massive issues on taxation, workers, illegal immigrants. I'm pretty sure she's only referring to progressive things, not to actually what people are really talking about. Warren's foreign policy showed she's missing why Trump was elected. I don't think that anyone on the left understands why Bernie and Trump were the people that were being pushed forth by the populace. These were people who directly wanted the U.S. to be at the center of the U.S. elections. They were tired of all this. They were tired of globalism, which has basically, it's failing throughout Europe, as we can see now through the Yellow Vest protests and how the governments in Europe are doing. The Brexit vote, which is now like the Irish votes before it, are now being revoted and revoted and revoted until the vote comes out the way that the elites in the EU want it to go. And right here, who is the real culprit then? Well, if it isn't Warren's elites, the corporations, or Trump, is it Washington and its ability, indeed, even its self-appointed duty to stand in the way of anything that seems not in this interest? All right, hold on. We got to back up just a minute here. The United States, Warren says, has embarked on a series of seemingly endless wars. Right now, Tulsi Gabbard is trying to get us out of Syria because ISIS has been more or less destroyed. However, apparently MSNBC wants us to unseat Assad, go to war with Russia, and nation build in Syria, plus most of the rest of the Middle East for some reason. Engaging in conflicts mistaken or uncertain objectives and no obvious path of completion. It's fine rhetoric, but the obvious path to completion is merely to end the wars. And yet Bush White House couldn't or didn't want to. Obama and explained the point while bombing and killing was being pursued in almost a dozen countries when he left office. have to look that one up. I don't know how to say that word. Anyway, so Bush started a lot of wars because 9/11. He attacked Iraq, Afghanistan, because that's where the attacks came from. Then he decided to attack Iraq because bad people, and which has completely destabilized that whole region. Obama got involved in Syria and continued the bombing, the attacks. And for Trump, he's done little. He's been publicly admonished by his own Secretary of Defense when he decided he wanted to end just one of these conflicts. So currently, we're just wanting war. Anyone who doesn't want to attack is bad, and it's over. I mean, you got to get out of these wars. We can't constantly be attacking people. The American people, Warren says, have less faith in their government today than in any other time in modern U.S. history. There's no danger in saying it's provable by polls. She doesn't elaborate or name culprits behind many national security misfortunes she identifies, and that's presidential weakness of the worst kind. Also, if you have to be honest, all the polls, all the stuff show that far left progressive politics, the stuff going on through the mainstream media, only represents the farthest left, 8% of the population. No one else agrees with identity politics. No one wants this stuff. We don't want it. We don't care if you were Native American. All we care about is, do you want to fix the economy? Do you think Americans, the populace of this nation, are the ones that you should look out for? Or do you believe in big government, globalist policies which will put Americans behind the eight ball and limit our ability to grow and thrive? That's what people care about, really, truly. Around the world, democracy is under assault. Authoritarian governments are gaining power. Right-wing demagogues are gaining strength. Movements towards openness and pluralism have been stalled. Inequality is growing, transforming rule by the people and rule by the wealthy elites. Here in the United States, many Americans seem to accept, even embrace, politics of division and resentment. Authoritarian governments are typically large-scale socialist movements, right-wing demagogues. There have been a lot of those. They're gaining strength because they're saying, let's limit the power of government. Let's focus on our own country. How do we get here? There's a story Americans like to tell ourselves about how we built a liberal international order, one based on democratic principles, committed to civil human rights, accountable to citizens, bound by rule of law, and focused on economic prosperity for all. It's a good story, deep roots, but in recent decades, Washington's focus has shifted from policies that benefit everyone to policies that benefit a handful of elites. After the Cold War, U.S. policymakers started to believe that because democracy had outlasted communism, democracy didn't outlast communism. Basic capitalism outlasted and caused communism to starve itself. Socialism, communism do not function for economies. You cannot take all the businesses in a country, all the farms, all the manufacturing, and suddenly say, this now belongs to the government. You cannot cut off the head of 1,000 animals and expect those animals to function. Communism destroyed itself because that's what communism does. Democracy is a form of government. Totalitarianism, authoritarianism, is socialism. It would be simple to build democracy anywhere and everywhere. They began to export a particular brand of capitalism. No. After the Cold War, the U.S. began to experience imperialism. We thought because we had won, we had the rights to do everything we wanted to, and it did not work. You cannot rule a nation from another nation without conquering that nation consistently and completely, and then doing it over and over and over again. This is kind of the series of seemingly endless wars, engaging in conflicts with mistaken or uncertain objectives with no obvious path to completion. Why are we in Syria? Why are we still in Iraq? What does any of this have to do with the U.S.? We are simply attacking other nations. Um, Making globalism work. The globalization of trade has been tremendously profitable for the largest American corporations, and it has opened up opportunity and lifted billions out of poverty around the world. But U.S. trade and economic policies have not delivered for the middle class, because when you globalize, you're exporting the jobs that the middle class would have to other countries. For decades, both Democratic and Republican leaders have asserted that free trade was a rising tide which lifts all boats. There is absolutely no way that it is possible to say that the world of 50 years ago was more wealthy or more beneficial to its citizens than the world today is. Anything that tells you that it is not is a lie. The middle class, although is shrinking, the bottom is rising. So don't think that it's worse now. We are in one of the best economic booms that we've ever had, and it is only continuing to grow. Great rhetoric, except that the trade deals they negotiated mainly lift the boats of the wealthy while leaving millions of working Americans to drown. Policymakers are willing to sacrifice American jobs in hope of lowering prices for consumer goods at home and spreading open markets abroad. Mostly the way that they like to think about international trade is a separation that the U.S. would go for more high-tech intellectual jobs, and that most of the labor would be performed overseas by low-income, low-wage, either Chinese, Mexican, wherever. That's kind of where they thought these jobs would go in the U.S. with some kind of rebound economy would be built on intellectual property, that type of deal. You see some of that in the U.S. with the computer market, and a lot of tech jobs, a lot of investment stuff. And there's also a lot of service industry in the U.S. Manufacturing, however, is kind of one of the baselines for Americans. They push for former Soviet states to privatize as quickly as possible despite the risk of corruption, and they advocated China's ascension to the World Trade Organization despite unfair trading policies. China is a massive government, massive economy, which seemingly has its own populace kind of in the bag. And this was all done under the pretense of globalization. She's going on and on about this, and I'm not sure that any of it really matters. I mean, she's just kind of describing how the history is. Donald Trump campaigned against a rigged system, but after 2 years in office, it's clear his economical policies are beyond inept. We have the lowest unemployment extremely low unemployment. Trade deals are coming through that are beneficial for the U.S. and U.S. economy. It hurts some sectors. It helps others. Let's see. Wages are still going up. The economy is at an all-time high. So none of his economic policies are failed, so they're all doing fine. They are deliberately rigged in favor of his family and wealthy friends. He renegotiated North American Free Trade Agreement, raises drug prices for consumers while doing little to stem the flow of goods and of jobs going to other countries. So is Elizabeth Warren a nationalist? Is she going to shut this down? Is she going to make it illegal for jobs and goods to go to other countries? His tariffs have hit farming communities hard and have driven trading partners into the arms of U.S. competitors, and conflicts of interest with corrupt foreign governments, from expedited Chinese patents for his daughter Ivanka Trump, millions of foreign money, Washington Hotel. I don't know if people know this about businesses, but if you stay at a hotel, Donald Trump doesn't actually get the money in his pocket that day. It's not really how businesses work. Who is really working for? I'm pretty sure that her whole line of reasoning is Trump bad, vote for me. But his policies have put Trump first and middle-class families last. Middle-class families, which no longer have, which have now the lowest unemployment in history. Wages are going up. Again, that's ending endless war. Trump is one of the. I don't know that Trump's gotten any wars yet. As president, he seems to be kind of wanting out of Syria, which most of the warmongers don't want to do. The invasion of Iraq, destabilization, fragmented Middle East, creating enormous suffering, participating in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. The regime remains in a tangled mess. The promise of the Arab Spring crushed. Iran emboldened, Syria devastated, the Islamic State or ISIS and its offshoots stubbornly resilient, and a massive refugee crisis threatening to destabilize Europe. The European Union is what's being destabilized. They're not really refugees; they're economic migrants. Is kind of the way they're starting to pattern it. So this is not true. Neither military nor civilian policymakers seem capable of defining success, but surely this it is not. So she's saying Bush bad, Obama bad, and that's it. Arabs, economic migrants. So she's against economic migrants. Yeah, I don't know. She's the kind of the strange one in the whole group. I don't think Elizabeth Warren knows a lot about what she's doing. I'll be interested to see what other people think about her. Anyway, she has a lot going on. I do kind of find it funny that lock her up will become lock him up, that she's going to have a massive deal coming forward with her lying about being Native American over and over and over again, and then 30 years later learning what that actually meant. It's kind of funny that she's done it for so long. How she'll compare with Cory Booker, with Kamala Harris, with Gavard, I don't know. I really have to say that I'm not a big fan of Elizabeth Warren. She is just kind of like this crazy old lady that I really did used to think was very smart, very intelligent, and then I watch her try and break out and be herself, and you realize that these people don't have any substance. They just say what they think they should say. They get hung up on identity, sex, gender, all these things that don't matter truly in the political world. And then she's basically trying to campaign sort of around what Trump did. Nationalist, lock him up, rhetoric. I don't know. I'd be interested to see what other people think. Oh my God, this video is 28 minutes long. Yeah, I'm going to end it. Thank you.